Hello, welcome to What We've Learned, episode 11. It's Steve here, and I'm delighted to say it's not just Steve, it's Steve and Shane. Shane, welcome back in the person. We missed you last week.
Thank you very much.
Well, so we missed you. We still had you talking to Robert, but you were pre-recorded because you were very busy co-chairing B2B Ignite USA, is that right?
Absolutely. It should have been a physical event. And the wonderful team at B2B Marketing managed in a very short period of time to pivot it to be a virtual event. And I was moderating the ABM stream, which was great fun, hard work being on USA hours and late nights, but really interesting topics, great speakers.
But less jet lag, I guess.
Yes.
So you've recovered. How's your week been?
I've recovered, yes, and reflecting back, I think really interesting week. One of the big topics that came out of the conference and also in the UK on some of the forums that I've been sitting on and chairing on seems to be a bit of an existential crisis amongst marketers at the moment, Steve. A bit of navel-gazing in terms of, what's our value? Who are we? What are we doing, particularly with all our challenges? And I thought this would be interesting to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. I mean, it doesn't feel like necessarily a new, but maybe navel gazing or a crisis on what are we, what's our value isn't new, but perhaps more focused right now.
So why do you think there is this increased sort of lens of really re-examining the function and our role?
Well, I guess with the lens of what we've been doing at Junction, the clients that we work with, and also with my tutoring, my teaching hat on, you get a nice cross section. I would hazard a guess, perhaps, Shane, that some of it may have stemmed from the almost the immediate breaks that needed to go on to business as usual marketing. So we've already used the word pivot in this podcast. I'm sure we'll use it again, like most conversations. So I think B2B, particularly marketing that tends to be about generating opportunity for sales, which is a lot of the markets that we operate in. That's not ground to a complete halt, but it had stalled because it wasn't appropriate or it wasn't practical to do so, whatever the reasoning. So I think that may have been one of the driving forces is crumbs. This isn't what we used to, the comfort blanket of doing demand generation campaigns, events, the traditional marketing, I think may well have just given us a bit of a confidence crisis on what is the right thing to do.
I think that's really interesting, and I think that's absolutely true, particularly for those marketers that I've been talking to preparing 2021 budgets, and that all of those unknowns that need dealing with and saying, well, what's our strategy as we come out of this? So how do you think the function of marketing has changed because of this, and maybe even more interesting, will change more and why going forwards?
Yeah, I can only, again, hazard a guess. I think the acceleration to digital, of course, and this goes far broader than just marketing, our hand has been forced to think about how do we run things far more digitally focused, strategically and tactically. So again, Junction Towers here, we're really busy with a lot of clients who have had the events rug pulled from under them, if you will. So where they had the comfort of, rightly or wrongly, trade shows, exhibitions, in-person events that they're running or others are running that they're attending, they've been maneuvering into, trying to avoid the word pivot, Shane, but I'm going to have to say it again. They've been pivoting into digital. So we're creating a lot of interactive digital content. So selector tools, motion graphics, and this is a really important point, actually, motion graphics versus animation, because motion graphics is a much more rapid to deploy technique than animation, which means it's quicker and cheaper. So ways that can create interactivity. So I think the traditional channels we're used to in marketing, we've had to move to digital. The bit I really don't know the answer to, Shane, but I'm hoping some of it will stick, is that when we do go back to some kind of normality, i.e. we can go out and about as brands, will we just flock straight back to those traditional events, for example, or will that digital stick? So is it a digital sticking plaster, or has it been a digital transformation, is the question I'm interested in.
That's a really interesting question, and I hope not, because I think that would be a great shame and not to learn some of the lessons that we are learning. But I think it's also interesting to me that I've always seen marketing's role as much wider than demand gen and providing leads to sales teams. But sadly, that is often in B2B marketing, as you say, the core function that it's labeled with and landed with. And actually, what's very interesting to me is there's a really deep reflection going on within some clients about the wider value of marketing and in its true sense. Are you seeing any of that?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Shane, because the other side of having to make very rapid changes is marketing departments and the marketing technology that they've got at their disposal has been needed by a lot of other parts of the business. So the best practice disciplines that marketeers have got on when to send a message to people, for example, so sending time optimization, the right kind of message, the right kind of creative, even down to the basics of when does this email with what subject line go out of the door. Brands have needed that for all sorts of communications. So employee communications, servicing and support messages, changes of operating hours, all sorts of different things. So I think this has actually given marketing, rather than navel-gazing in a crisis confidence, is an opportunity to show the broader skills, to exactly your point, that marketing functions have got. And probably, back to that technology piece, it may well have helped justify marketing technology purchases that weren't be fully utilized in the past, because suddenly they can be used for a lot more communication across a lot more parts of the business.
I think that's a great point, and I would agree with that. I've seen it being picked up for internal comms, being able to reach out for use, the likes of marketing automation or email systems to reach employees. But I think what I've also seen a real shift of emphasis to, oh my goodness, it's all about our customers and our existing customers, not just getting new ones. And actually, we should be being a lot smarter with what we're doing with them and what do they need, because actually they're the ones who are spending money with us at the moment and probably will get us through this. So that's where I'm really excited, because I know, like you, I feel that the tech hasn't necessarily been well deployed up to this point to improve the customer experience. So that's the bit I'm super excited about, and I hope we'll see more of that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And literally, the customer experience. We get pre-obsessed with the prospect experience, if you will, because we are often in marketing driven to just keep generating sales opportunity. So rather than it just being a phrase, it's the idea that we can use this technology to, as you say, keep the people we've already got a relationship with. And in fact, for some of the clients that I'm working with, for brands that I've learned what they're doing over the last few weeks by teaching, i.e. working with them from a tutoring point of view, it isn't just about keeping the up and cross-sell opportunities there as well if it's done properly. So as you say, it's not just keep what you've got, you can't prospect, it's keep what you've got, and maybe your incremental revenues are coming from those existing pots if you're clever with how you, as I say, you create the right up and cross-sell environment.
Absolutely, and I would concur with that. And in fact, had a very interesting conversation with a brand I can't name, but it's a global brand, about the realization that actually perhaps they needed to revisit their brand purpose and what they stood for, because they got some amazing sort of subsidiary services which just really weren't clear within their current brand positioning, and actually really looking hard at that and saying, but we want to be known for so much more, and how can we communicate that? So I think, all of these true skills that lie within the marketing function, from deploying the technology through to, huge step back strategy. What is it? Who's going to buy this? How are we going to do it? Is our brand fit for purpose? All of those things.
Yeah, it's funny enough, actually, and to play one-upmanship with you, I'm also working with a global brand that I can't name. But this is a consumer brand from a particular market and moving into a completely different space for lots of different reasons. And they're having to entirely rethink themselves, and even down to the level of, hence I'm helping out from a CRM strategy point of view. They've had restrictions in their markets in the past that means they can't do CRM. Now they need to, but they now need to think effectively like a consumer technology brand rather than the markets they're from, which are vastly different to that. So yeah, it's the kind of mega pivot of all pivots so far for me.
You're just going for the bingo pivot today. I don't want to know what it
Yeah.
is.
Sorry about that. I'm 3 pivots and I'm out. They're definitely. Let's go from one P to another. Yeah, let's talk about Phil, who you've had the fortune of spending some time with earlier today.
I have, and that's this morning caught up with Phil Gosney, who's head of global marketing and product management for Maersk Drilling, and really pleased to have a chat with him about his experience, because as you'll find out, Phil didn't start in a normal sort of traditional marketing entry career, but brings, I think, a real value from his outside in perspective of how he's set up and is running Maersk Drilling marketing. So looking forward to this one.
Yeah, fab. Well, let's get you and Phil into the conversation then, Shane.
Hi, and morning, Phil. Great to be talking to you, and thank you very much. I understand this is your debut podcast.
It is, and it's a pleasure to give it a try. So I hope I've got something worth listening to. Otherwise, you'll have to delete it, Shane.
I'm sure you're going to have lots to share. And the reason for inviting you on, you're very honest in terms of, if you like, your career and where you've got to. And I think you described yourself to me when we first met as a non-marketeer. So I think it'd be really interesting just to find out and talk to everybody about how your career has resulted in effect today being head of global marketing and product management at Maersk Drilling, because it wasn't your traditional start, perhaps, Phil.
No, I think that's right, Shane, and I'm fairly open in saying that I'm a rare head of marketing with no marketing experience, and I think that's a little bit credit to Maersk, where I work, and their courage to put people into positions where they believe we can learn on the job, using our experience of the business as well. So I think I'm 18 months in. Marketing is a fantastic place to be. Setting up that team and establishing it for the first time in Maersk Drilling has been a challenge, but for sure it comes with great challenges when you start in a new world, but it also comes with some opportunities, I think, to really question what the value of marketing is and why are we doing this for Maersk Drilling.
Fabulous. And so in terms of where you did start, it wasn't in marketing, but where did you start?
So I actually started in the City of London as a lawyer. So I worked in the city for 4 or 5 years, for one of the larger Magic Circle firms doing fraud investigations before. As you know, Shane, I live in Denmark now and have done for 10 years. So I fell for their international recruitment campaign, which was a Danish lady. So I moved over to Copenhagen 10 or 11 years ago now, worked as a lawyer, and then I guess started to branch out from there, moving on to the commercial side of the business and setting up various teams, looking for opportunities in the business to really drive more value. And I guess that's where marketing came in, because when I started to look into marketing, that's where I realized that once again we were not using the full spectrum of possibilities by not having a marketing focus in Maersk Drilling. So I asked to start that up and did so around 18 months, 2 years ago now.
I think that's really interesting. I don't think there's many people who can have started marketing by fraud investigation. I think, but obviously that sort of forensic and, as you say, deep dive and being able to see the whole picture must be quite an advantage. And you've mentioned, you've literally built the marketing team as a function at Maersk Drilling from scratch with a blank piece of paper. What does the marketing function look like today at Maersk Drilling?
Right now, we are me, 3 people doing what I would say is traditional marketing. So really driving our core business towards customers, supporting the business that way, and then 2 more people who are working on new products, which is another thing that has kind of really come under my wing the last years. We've changed strategy and decided to branch out a little bit more from traditional drilling rig offerings. And I think product marketing, product management, that's another experiment and another opportunity that I think Maersk Drilling has, and again, credit to the business if I'm allowed to dig where I think there might be gold, and we've researched it and looked into it and now set up a team to focus on that.
I'm not sure you're allowed to use digging analogies, Phil, when you work for a drilling company.
No,
but interesting about you saying about new products, because one of the things that's happening in marketing, there's quite a big debate going on about whether product development product marketing, sits within the marketing function. And increasingly I'm seeing, particularly in large enterprise and big tech companies, it almost being completely separate. And what's the reason for you doing this within Maersk Drilling? Is it a diversification board strategy, or?
I think yes. In one respect, why are we trying to develop more products? That's a response to our market, which is heavily challenged. And once you've decided to do more on the product side, then you, as you say, need to decide where should it sit. And I would argue strongly that the reason for launching a product is to get value from it, and who knows most about customer value and where a product may do well. That tends to be in the marketing and commercial function. So that's where it sits for us, and I think that really drives the initial question for a product, which is why are we doing this and what is the value for a customer. And I think I've at least seen a few examples along the way where that question has been asked far too late, and it can be expensive to develop a product which isn't suitable for the market and where customers don't pull it. So I would really argue strongly for a commercial angle to be there very early on, and in this case for Maersk Drilling, we're lucky enough to drive that as well.
I think that's fascinating, because I think particularly, there was a sense of, particularly again back to the tech market, we will build it and they will come, and I suspect those days may be over, particularly with the current challenges with us. And I love the lens you put on it. Who better than marketing to understand what customers need and want, and in challenging markets to build things for them. What else do you think the skills that marketing bring to an organisation, what are the commercial skills that you don't tend to find in other departments that you've worked in?
I think that's a great question, Shane, and it's one that I think my jaw dropped and my eyes kind of sprung open 18 months ago when I started to dig into this, because I first got interested when I heard the data insights that were possible from modern marketing technologies and the way they can be applied, and that led me to look further into it. So I think the ability to gather digital insights for me is something that our business has not deployed in the past, and which we're now getting our arms around and starting to use. We have a very small number of customers, so any insight that I can get and provide to our frontline sales organization that a certain person has looked at a certain document at a certain time on various channels is really gold dust for our sales organization. And as you know as well, we've done some deep research into certain customers for the first time using ABM methodologies, and that has paid huge dividends both on the frontline sales but also with regard to our executives using that research and being much more prepared for the conversations with people they meet. So I think analytics, research, and real deep customer focus are some of the skills that spring to mind.
I think that's really interesting for me, because I think when that's how we met was obviously the whole project around account-based marketing. And I think the thing that struck me and really stood out was that you saw, perhaps even more clearly than those of us who are close and have been working with it for a long time, that power of that deep research, as you say, into a very small number of customers in your industry, and relished the sharing with the rest of the organisation of that deep insight. What's the reaction to being sharing some of that stakeholder insight?
Fairly short, Shane. Words from our chief executive officer, like "wow," or from our chief operating officer. I think he just wrote back "awesome" and a smiley face. So I think they don't. It's also a transformation of what marketing means, right? And I was as naive as many others in our business as what marketing can do. And it's been my job to first look into it. Secondly, take out the bits from marketing that can really give value for our business. But thirdly, then to show them, to communicate that, to actually get the value from it in the end. And I think that some of the research pieces and the deep insights you can get, they're the things that make people say, whoa, I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know that's what marketing actually did. The stuff that takes time, of course, is building content from scratch, which we've also been doing. And that actually tends to get less of a wow effect, but it's kind of the price you pay. You need to push something out in order to get an insight back. So I tend to get most reactions on the insights, and that's what I carry around with me, and my team carry around with them as we move through the business is 2 or 3 of these examples that make people understand what marketing actually is.
That makes me so happy. You've no idea, because actually, as a data-led marketer myself, I think the wow is in the data and the insights and the time and the money that goes into that. You get paid back in dividends. And I think that the fact that as you say, that you get that stakeholder buy-in as, oh, wow, that's the real value of marketing. Whereas too often, I think marketing departments can be seen as sort of almost like production content factories, and it's our output that is being measured. And I love the fact that you've put the heart on the value. It's almost like, oh, we have to do the content, rather than, there are lots of marketers out there who perhaps don't spend so much time, effort and resource on the insight side. So I think that's a great takeaway from this session.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that's an advantage. I've worked on the front line of the business before moving into marketing. So I think that's one of the advantages I perhaps had coming into it, is that I could, after 6 months, have turned around to our business and say, I've looked, I've considered, and this marketing stuff isn't all what it's cracked up to be. I don't think we should do this. But I also have the ability to really say, what is the value to our business, and just concentrate on those small pieces in the first run at this. So, and that's where I see the insights. It's the ability to deliver a piece of information that changes our pricing approach to a customer, or it changes the way we actually enter a meeting and talk to a specific person. That's where I get the feedback that this was worth all the effort, and it is. You can see it when it takes place, and the reactions both from our front line, but also customers experiencing things for the first time from us, or seeing a different face of Maersk Drilling than the one they've seen before.
I think that's really interesting, is that you raised that point, which obviously within account-based marketing, or some people are starting to talk about account-based everything, it's quite ambitious, is, as you say, that when the recipient, the customer or the prospective client, sees something that they really relate to, and again, that's where you bring the insight to life. And I know there's a project that you're working on. I'm not sure quite how much whether you can talk about it, but actually the challenge that we have today with working from home, and obviously you've got big physical rigs, and really important normally, I know that you have lots of your customer stakeholders who go and visit these rigs. I believe that you've got an innovative new way that you're bringing to your customers so they can experience it in a different way.
Sure, and I guess COVID has made us all stop a little bit and think, and I think for us, it was maybe a couple of weeks ago where we just stopped up, and it was actually someone in my team who said, hey, we better dust off this old marketing material about how we reactivate our rigs, so how we bring our rigs back to market when they've not been working for a while. And that just made me realize, hang on a minute, has our customer journey just completely changed? The way we normally get people to experience our rigs, they can't do that. our customer usually will fly to a rig and inspect it physically. They can't do that. We will generally fly to them, visit their offices and take them through a 3D animation of our rigs. We can't do that. We generally share a lot of documentation in Showpad with customers, but I can see that that's usually shared after we've met with them. We can't do that, so our Showpad statistics are dropping off a cliff right now because people are not used to sharing things without a physical trigger. So I think a lot has changed, and it was a little bit of a whoa moment for me a week and a half ago, where we need to stop and consider how do we deliver the same kind of experience but without physical meetings, and that is something we're working on hard at the moment to do virtual rig tours and virtual experiences with customers to try to keep that personal touch.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. I mean, we've all had to learn very rapidly new technology. And I've spent the last 2 days moderating a conference in the States. Should have been in the States, was in Chicago. Very late night as a result last night. But this new technology was a theme that came through about everybody thinking and reimagining their customer journeys and what new ways can you do things. We have to do virtual conferences now rather than go in person. I think that understanding of you can't physically fly to a rig, how do you bring it to them, can be very exciting and potentially might change things forever, because the cost of visiting rigs obviously must be huge. So I would imagine that you might have a very exciting campaign on your hand when you get your virtual rig live. Yep. And start to share it.
Well, it makes it scalable as well, and I think it forces you to think in a different way. We've never thought we needed scale. If a customer wants to visit a rig, then they must for sure be very interested, and therefore we will take them to that rig and escort them around and so on. But the byproduct of doing it digitally is we still have those customers who are super interested, but then you do have a virtual journey, a digital experience, which you can offer to customers that are in completely different stages of their buying process, and maybe don't even need a rig right now, but just want to experience one. So it gets very interesting when you can create a customer experience for one purpose, but from a value perspective, you can already see the satellite possibilities of it and how you can tweak it slightly, but get a lot more value from doing it as well.
I think that point about scalability is fantastic, and particularly, I would imagine that you maybe only got 2 or 3 people visit a rig from a major customer, but now you can send that virtual rig in effect to their board and really sort of surprise and delight. And whilst they might not be the engineers, making the final decision, the fact that they can have an experience too, particularly within this whole account-based approach, is super exciting.
Yeah, and also going back to insights, of course. I mean, if you supply these tours either via microsites or apps, you can watch how it spreads. Before we would give a physical tour to real people, and they may go back and tell their colleague, hey, I've just been offshore and inspected this rig and it looked great, and here's 1 or 2 photographs. Now we will be able to watch the spread through that customer organization of the tour as it's shared via app or through logons to microsites and so on. So again, when it comes to the value for money, it is of course to give the customer a different experience completely, but also get that value of passing on those detailed insights about, okay, here's a new person we don't know who now knows what a Maersk rig looks like. How can we use that insight to build a relationship or to build an even stickier process with that customer that builds loyalty before we've even physically met them sometimes.
I think that sort of pass along factor is really powerful, and as you say, broadening and deepening that relationship within an account. And one of the tips I heard yesterday, which I'll pass on to you, Phil, was that actually it's not just about the number of people that you're touching, as you say, that sort of viral, excuse the use of that word at the current time, but approach, but the time that they spend, and one of the KPIs I saw a case study on was actually the amount of time that that was spent in total looking at this new form of content, and actually they measured that as a key engagement factor. So not just how many people we reached, but if you added up cumulatively with an organisation, can end up being hours, days, longer than even your normal hours sales meeting. So that's quite an interesting KPI, the amount of engagement and the time.
It's certainly, yeah, and we've talked about this before, Shane, and our use of Showpad, but we've had experiences where we've shared two different value propositions to customers on Showpad and seen one being looked at for 22.5 hours and passed around multiple stakeholders in a business, and the other one being looked at for a handful of minutes. And yet the customer feedback on the phone is that they're interested in both. And I think that's where the time looked is of course a valuable KPI for the quality of the content, but it's a key insight when you are looking at a small number of customers, and you can basically tell your account manager whether the feedback they're getting from a customer is accurate or inaccurate. So I can only echo kind of the value of having that level of detailed insight as well.
I love that, because there's lots of chat in our industry about intent data at the moment. It's a very hot topic, but actually to me that's the best explanation between not all intent is equal, and the massive difference between your first party data of a customer spending 22 hours versus a couple of minutes. And as you say, knowing that and having a very engaged conversation off the back of that, and even what you might choose to send them next or how you might price things, very exciting.
Yep.
And just before we sort of wrap up today, I'm really interested, because one of the things that you also told me, Phil, in addition to all your responsibilities in terms of marketing, you were given an additional task, which was to run if you like, the crisis project team for the pandemic. And I think it's interesting to just explore, with your marketing hat on, how you've been able to bring that lens to the crisis planning that you've had to go through.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I was lucky it wasn't the crisis team, because they had to work far too many hours a day. So we had a separate crisis team, but I was asked to head up our strategic response, essentially to COVID, and I've had a separate team pulled from around the organization running on that for 10 or 11 weeks. And we were essentially asked to look at how COVID could impact our business from 3 weeks out up to 6 months out. And of course that 6 months is too optimistic, so we're now looking 18 months ahead. And when I mentioned it to you, Shane, it was really in the context of saying to you that again, my learnings from marketing is really mostly around the capabilities that sit within marketing, and it's not just by doing marketing that we can add the greatest value to the business, so long as the business understands what capabilities we have. And when I was asked to head up the strategic response, and I thought to myself, well, what do I need to know? I need to know how will COVID be impacting all of our key countries in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 18 months' time. It immediately struck me, well, I need research, and who better to do research than our ABM agency, Transmission? They're fantastic at it. What else do I need? I need a clear dashboard that can show me data patterns, outlooks, prognoses. Who else can build that better than an ABM marketing company? What else do I need? Well, I need the ability to quickly change the data, to change the input, to change the research, and come up with some very clear recommendations. And if you have the first two, if you have research and a great dashboard, then we could quickly summarize the impact for the business. So I think, again, the business looked a wee bit odd at me when I said I know how to fix this, and it's using marketing capabilities. But for me, it was a clear way to go. And I think 18 months ago, I would not have done that. I would have gone about it a completely different way. So I think sometimes I see, I've been to conferences where with marketeers where they say, well, the business doesn't understand me, and I would just challenge ourselves to get out into the business and make them understand. And heading the COVID strategy for Maersk Drilling and that task force has been a perfect forum to say, hey, this is core of marketing. There will be no content and there will be no campaign, but there sure as hell will be a lot of insights. And by the way, the depth of understanding that we have of COVID through these tools and through these methodologies, you don't realize it, but this is the depth of insight we have on our customers using exactly the same technique. And that is a very strong value proposition in a completely different context, but one that's been absorbed, at least in the business that I work for.
Really fascinating stuff, Shane. So interesting to hear from somebody that embeds really deep insight into what they're doing. So not just surface level or even potentially subjectivity that creeps into so much marketing, but Phil's thoughts on the duality, if you will. So that really clever technique of giving that client or that prospect the virtual tour, the technology that they can then share around that business. And of course, the brilliant bit under the surface is the insight that gives back to Phil and his team is where is that going? How's it being consumed? Who's using it? That may well help for lots of different purposes from sales and a marketing point of view as well.
And I think the standout for me is that confidence that insight is valuable to the board. And it was like, it's so obvious when somebody else points it out, but sometimes I think we perhaps keep some of our skills and our outputs too close to ourselves. And I think that lesson that we really should know our customers brilliantly, whether it's data, whether it's market research, whether it's insight from all sorts of the new technology, such as intent and others. But we should be better at sharing this. So I think we have got a bit of a job as marketeers to do a better job of marketing our outputs and what we can do for the whole business. That was my big takeaway.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. Intent is the word that came to mind when he was talking about that technology and using that platform to share the virtual tours. I mean, that's intent on steroids, isn't it? I'm yet to be convinced, I have to say, of intent data as a movement. I can see there's positives for sure, but that kind of thing, that really tells you intent. If someone's going to watch your virtual tour for hours as a business, that's incredibly strong for you. And I think your point's very, very relevant into our first part of the discussion, is that what he's demonstrating there is that value of marketing rather than navel gazing and being lacking in confidence in a crisis. Is, look, this is a chance for us to show the discipline of marketing, of B2B marketing, and what we are very good at doing and how that can be useful across a wider arc of the business than perhaps we're given credit.
I agree. And I think that was one of the big takeaways that I had from last week from the US, is that this understanding, and we've known it for a long time, and I'm passionate about data, but all data is not equal. And the difference between first party, i.e. your own intent data, what your customers are telling you at the touch points that you own, not the ones you're buying in. And that came out as a big theme last week. And I think there's a lot more along the customer experience journeys, and you and I have done audits whereby that will start to be used to drive all sorts of business decisions, not in the way that it's being used at the moment.
Yeah, very good point. And actually, back to an earlier thread today on that technology versus human piece. So as I've said, there's been a digital spectrum change, but that first party intent data can come from humans so effectively as well. If you are, as we've said, often grasping with how do we keep the customers we've got if we can't find new ones, and we've got lots of different parts of the business, not just sales and marketing, that are engaging with them at the moment, how do we capture that? Because a human that can tell us, well, I had this conversation with this customer today, it's maybe an engineer or servicing or support, that's really, really important, valuable for mining versus, as you say, that much broader, less high quality third party data that we can pull in.
I agree. And I think that the peer-to-peer information that's being shared. Is your board talking to other boards about their shared problems? Are they sharing it with you in the marketing team? That's the sort of thing I want to know. And I completely agree with you. It's the anecdotal conversations that are happening on Zoom, but they're not happening at the water cooler. There was a brilliant article by Scott Stockwell, who's another marketer who I really admire, editor-in-chief at IBM, on his blog on LinkedIn, talking about exactly this point. Where are your current water cooler moments, and how can you capture them?
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. And it reminds me, the admiring of marketeers, Graham Wiley, who's VP of Marketing International at ADP, the payroll company. If you ask me coldly to say, Steve, who do you admire? Graham would be top of my list for the last 10 years. And what he embodies is, and I've never seen Graham in a meeting without a whiteboard pen and a whiteboard and this very rapid, agile problem solving. So he and his team there and wherever he's been, the people I admire it's almost problem solving is business as usual. How do we collaborate? How do we build things together? And as you say, if the board of any organization is struggling to solve problems, good marketeers have having to be solving problems anyway. So why can't our almost consultative aspects of marketing be used and just pivoted into, there's that word again, into completely different problems that the business may be wrestling with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that problem solving, working with teams. In fact, again, Scott leads amazing sessions using design thinking, the 5 whys. So we must get him on. That's now on my list to ask him.
Absolutely agree. Yes, indeed.
So he would be great. Graham would be fantastic. And somebody else who comes to mind, Andrew Colwell, who also, takes this sort of consultative-led approach into the companies he's worked with. So lots more people that we should be talking to and sharing their wisdom.
Indeed. And even people that we should continue to check in with that we've already spoken with. So just again, as what you were saying around that positivity around marketing, Paul Cash, who we talked to earlier on in this series around B2B and storytelling and emotion, he really bangs the drum for being proud of B2B marketing rather than us being very negative and shy and withdrawn about the career or the industry. Paul, I think he's writing a book on the subject as well, Shane. So, someone like Paul, who from that angle is really trying to champion things, is only good for us all collectively, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And sharing more wonderful stories. I think that whole storytelling that he talked about, I sent in one where I saw a client of mine had been sent a wonderful baby shower gifts after having quite a tough time going into labour in COVID and all the rest of it. And it was from Salesforce, and she got a very good relationship with the team there because she's part of she does testing and things at the company she works with. And I thought it was just a really nice human touch, which she shared on social media about how lovely it was, one of the companies she worked with, to send a gift. It's those stories we want to hear more of, the B2B giving back, really.
Yeah, it's the human part of that. And actually, Shane, is it worth just talking about our friends Ernest and what they did last week at your B2B Ignite in Chicago?
Absolutely deserves a massive shout out, because the event went virtual and we should have all been there in person. There was a realization, I think, from Chris Wilson and the team that actually, the money that would have been expenses and all the rest of it, perhaps there was a better cause it could go to. So they chose the Chicago charity that's helping the homeless, people who haven't got access to food supplies, because Chicago's been very hard hit by COVID. And they had that on their booth, their virtual booth, as a donation page that all of I think there's around 1,000 attendees in the end, could visit the booth and donate to. And I just thought, how brilliant is that? That really is giving back in the true sense.
Yeah, bravo to them. Really, really nice way of doing something valuable. Really, really nice. Well, that seems like a really nice place, a positive place to leave it for the day, Shane, perhaps, is that, it's not, we started with navel-gazing and fear, but we're seeing all sorts of positives that, it's not all doom and gloom by any stretch of the imagination.
I agree. Always good to end on a positive.
Absolutely. We'll end it there. And that, my friends, is episode 11. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, everybody. We'll speak to you soon.